thoughts take us out of the present moment. Not only might we miss something important, but we miss everything important when we're not present. We are not our thoughts. We are the person behind the thoughts. People's minds are constantly creating problems and planning and reflection all day long. And so they are constantly thinking, and they're not actually really where they're at. There's no thoughts that are going to be more important than us listening.
Acting on emotions as guides to truth. Stillness. Surrendering to what is. Seeking. Using my gifts with purpose. Light. This is the emotional blueprint.
Last podcast, I talked quite a bit about attachment and how attachment is like the root of all suffering in life. And me and you have talked quite a bit about like emotional suffering and how to start to work through that. And so we're going to talk about kind of a next level principle that can help us eliminate a lot of suffering in our life. And I want to just mention kind of a Buddhist teaching that I think is powerful to kind of set this up before we talk about this. So there's something in Buddhism called dukkha. And dukkha it's a powerful word. It describes the inherent dissatisfaction in the human existence.
Inherent dissatisfaction.
So just by being a physical being, what comes with that is inherent dissatisfaction. We always want more. It's never enough. Now, what's cool in Christianity, I was looking into this as well. The Christian term for this is maybe sin. Sin. And what's cool is the Greek word for sin means to miss the mark, which I thought was kind of cool. So as a human being, and I think this is emerging as a theme in this podcast, but as a human being, if we just don't do anything, if we just passively go throughout our life, we will miss the mark. We will sin or miss the mark, and then we will be very dissatisfied and unhappy. And so we have to step away from that into presence and into stillness. And so we got to talk about that more. So let's talk about what does it mean to be present to you?
Like in the moment?
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I just think there's like that saying that's like, if you're in the future, if you're thinking about the future, then it's like anxiety, or if you're thinking about the past too much, then you could be feeling depression. And so in my head, it's like being present is, I guess it's exactly what I just said. Like being present is not being too stuck somewhere else. It's just whatever's going on currently, you're able to participate and think about that thing and give your attention to that thing that's happening right now, as opposed to something else somewhere else.
I like some of those words you used. It reminds me of like being. What does it mean to be present? To me, it means being here now, being fully where you're at. And the most common enemy of not being present or not being able to be where we're at fully is thoughts take us out of that. Thoughts take us out of the present moment. So we were talking about on one of the podcasts before, like the two great enemies like within us. One that we've been talking a lot about is pain that is not resolved. And then the other great enemy that is a constant is thoughts or thinking.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so what it means to be present is it means to intentionally not think. Now, people have a hard time with this because don't we need to think in certain moments? Well, yeah. Well, when are those moments though? When is thinking like what we can be present and think at the same time? So,
Mm-hmm.
to me, those moments are okay. If I'm driving home and I get a flat tire, I have to use my thoughts to solve that problem.
Right.
So, like current problem. And then it's also important to like plan ahead. So like planning. So solve a problem, planning, and then like reflection is valuable too. But the problem is people or people's minds are constantly creating problems and planning and reflection all day long. And so they are constantly thinking and they're not actually really where they're at. So
it sounds exhausting.
It's exhausting.
Yeah, that sounds like it.
I mean, you've never experienced that, but I have.
No, I think I've experienced what you're describing.
Most of us have had a taste. Most of us have had a taste of that. Yeah, it's exhausting.
Ernest is like, it sucks for you.
Yeah.
Man, that must be
It's
really
not how I
hardcore.
meant that.
Yeah. So before we talk about some let's talk about why it's so important to be present. What's the value of that?
You could miss something important. You could react improperly, or maybe in a way that you didn't want to react in a situation. Like if you were talking to somebody but your mind is somewhere else, you might not give them the attention that they deserve. They might say something very important and you might miss it completely, Those are just things that I think about with not being in the moment. They're like fears that I have is like, oh, I don't want to make this person feel like I'm not listening or yeah, I think that those are the things that come up for me is like, how would this affect somebody else if I were not present with them at this moment? Or how would I solve this issue? Would I solve it correctly? Or how I expect to solve the problem? If I'm not present, then probably I won't be able to solve that to my own expectation,
Totally. There's some good, powerful bullet points that occurred in my head as you were talking about that. So it's like, why is it so important to be present? Not only might we miss something important, but we miss everything important when we're not present. Guaranteed. Why? Because all connection comes from being still and present. Okay, so let's talk. All connection comes from being still and present and in the moment. Well, why? Like, how does that make sense? Well, I love in Buddhism, they talk about how we have these two minds. We have the physical brain. We have the physical brain, but then we have they call it a pure mind or our spiritual consciousness brain. But I just think it's so fascinating to think about like, okay, like if you were to die right now and your physical body were to die, your consciousness or your spirit would leave your body. Would you still have the ability to think?
No.
You absolutely would.
But would it just be like pure thought?
Yeah.
So that's cool. That's a cool idea.
It is cool.
Yeah.
Because we have our physical brain, which is chaos, which is if you spend more time in your physical brain drifting and distraction and just going with whatever thought comes up, you will notice you will be exhausted. You will have a lot of anxiety and you will feel a lot of shame. Your fear will run your life and you'll feel pretty bad about yourself. There's a lot of comparing comes from here, So just going back to this like hypothetical though, being dead physically, yeah, of course you would have, yeah, you do have the ability to think. It just is from a place of awareness and purity.
Yeah.
We have that now. It's just a battle of which one do we want to, which space do we want to be in?
Well, it sounds, I mean, like, just hearing that, it's like, of course I would, it's this mental tug of war, and of course I'd want to be pulling for the side that isn't distracted or not in the moment, but how do you even choose? Like, how, you know what I'm saying? Like, how do you choose which team you're on, pulling for which side?
Mm-hmm. Well, in the Bible, it talks about this a little bit. It says someone cannot serve two masters. You have to choose one or the other. And so we're going to talk about how you can choose more of the pure mind to be present more. And we'll talk about how that is really going to help you in your life. My friend Jess died a while ago, and me and her have these very real conversations.
Mm-hmm.
And when she was alive, she was very boisterous, and like she was like, her personality filled the room. She was like she was pretty intense too. Like it was, Jess was a lot.
Mm-hmm.
She had it's interesting feeling her, talking to her now, because she's not in her physical brain. She's just in her, and she still is who she is, but it is, she doesn't, she doesn't say as much, but she still is like, she still is her, but it's hard to explain. It's like, it's just almost everything she says is powerful and intentional. I think that
sounds
is
like
the word.
Yeah.
And that is the true nature of what is the true nature of this spirit, this what we should talk about that for a second before we go into, so like, okay, I'm like, who am I really? What is the nature of my true self? Well, what we know is that we are not our thoughts. We are the person behind the thoughts. We are the awareness behind the thoughts. And that the nature of that person is, I want to get your thoughts on this, but one of the nature of who that person, who we all are, our nature, our spiritual nature, is we are very aware and we are very intentional. We do things on purpose, with purpose. That is the true nature of every soul, of every soul. So why are we not like that all the time? Well, because we get taken out of that because of thoughts and potentially emotions. So other thoughts you have on like the nature of our soul?
I feel like everybody's soul has like a really good, maybe propensity isn't the right word, but like a really good like grasp on honesty. I think deep down we all know what's right and wrong, or what the truth at least is about things. I just say that because I've seen people close to me that have suffered in their thoughts, and when they finally come full circle in their own thoughts and have a realization about themselves or about what they're doing or how they can improve or something, it's always tied to this honesty that comes from deep down, that they're like, I knew that was the answer, and I just didn't want to accept that.
Totally.
And it was like, yeah, it's because you knew that was the truth. Deep down, you felt that, and you were fighting with it inside your own mind.
And this is what people refer to as like intuition. The truth, when something aligns with like their deeper self, it's like, oh my gosh, I just kind of knew that already.
Yeah.
But I just didn't know how to say it.
Or I was too afraid to say that that's what I felt. It's always something that gets in the way of that. But I think that's pretty integral with the whole purposefulness of our souls. There's some real honesty and real truth that comes from there. to be able to have the motivation and I think like the concrete, solid feeling of having purpose behind what you're doing. There's something like a surety that you feel, when you're doing it. And that comes from truth, I think, too.
We are made up of truth. And I like the whole visual of like light and darkness. So our true self is made up of truth, is made up of light. But then our physical body is a gift, but it also comes with it an asterisk of darkness enters in anytime it wants to.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's this battle. And I like this visual of like what in any given moment or any given day is the darkness gonna is your internal self gonna be more dark or more full? Is the light going to shine through, or is the darkness going to overtake it? Because both can't exist in the same space. And so what's really powerful about what we're talking about is in Buddhism, they talk a lot about breath and the power of like breath. Breathing and breath, we'll talk more about how powerful the breath is in some of these practices, but it's a renewal. Like I can get lost in the darkness. I can get taken away in this stream of thinking for minutes or hours or days, or a lot of people, it's years, their whole life. But even if it's minutes or hours or day, whatever, as soon as I become aware that I'm lost in thinking, then I'm in that moment, I'm fully present. It's like a renewal. Like so we are awareness. Anytime we become aware of what's going on, in that moment, it's a renewal. It's a reset. I'm now present, and I can now start from this point to continue to try to stay in this space. So there's no shame involved in it. Like, oh my gosh, like I'm trying to meditate and I'm so dumb. Like it's been 20 minutes and I've just been thinking the whole time. That is that's more suffering. That's more thoughts that you're holding on to. It's just a recognition of right now I am aware and yeah. And I just go from there. So can't wait to talk more about how to do this, but I wanted to share an experience I had recently, maybe two quick ones that I think really highlight the value of being in the moment and being present. So let's just highlight a few that we know. So one is connection. And maybe let's highlight them and then we'll circle back. So meaningful connection can only happen when we are present. So connection, there's a lot less suffering if we are committed to be in the moment and be still throughout our day. Why? Because there's a lot less thoughts that are causing negative feelings for us that we don't allow in. And then the other is we start to tap into our true nature. And with that, there comes a lot of positive things from that. So connection, wisdom, there's a lot. Those are a few that come to my mind. Let's circle back to the whole connection. Why is it that all meaningful connection can actually only come when we are present? Well, let's just use people as an example. What does it mean to be present when I'm with someone? Well, it means part of what it means is to not be thinking about what I'm going to say next while the other person is speaking. I'm just my mind is clear. There's no busyness. Now, of course, it's normal for thoughts to come up when someone is speaking, but when they do, I instantly kind of put them on the side. But what if a thought is super important that I need to well, you have to trust that if a thought does come up and I put it on the side, if I am meant to share it, it's going to come up when the other person is done speaking. That's always been a powerful lesson for me, because my nature is I like to talk more than I like to listen. And it's not good. And so I have to, but it's been this kind of like honor and this respect of nothing, no thoughts that are going to come up for me while Ernest is talking. There's no thoughts that are going to be more important than us listening.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing is going to come up in my own brain that's going to be more important for me listening. Because if I'm truly listening, yeah, just trusting that process, that when he's done, then whatever is going to come up is going to be what I'm supposed to share. So I'm kind of going off on a tangent here, but any thoughts on like why on being present with the importance of like being present with people?
I think there's a lot of things that I think you can say about that. Like, yeah, like you don't want to interrupt someone. You don't want to not be listening to them when they're talking. I think that like it's almost you're stealing an opportunity from yourself to be genuine with someone if you're doing that. If you're talking over or cutting someone off or thinking something while they're talking, you're not showing them your natural self, your real self, or I argue your best self, because it's like
Right.
when you're not in your thoughts and you're not thinking about what you're going to say, that means you're somewhere else, and it's probably present in the moment, feeling or listening. And the response could also come from that place that you're tapping into while you're communicating with them, you know?
Yeah.
I'm trying to like think about like social settings and like what really makes that important, you know?
Well, let's maybe be more clear on like our bold statement of like all meaningful connection can only come from a place of being present. Because can I still connect with someone on the topic of sports or fishing
Yeah.
or hot air balloons?
Yeah.
if I'm not actually listening to what they're saying very well and I'm just kind of paying attention to my own thoughts, like sure, like that stuff is fine. Or sports, sure. But when we talk about meaningful connection, we're talking about connection that is coming from a place of emotion.
Yeah.
Like emotional connection.
Yeah.
Intuition, actually like being able to read someone and tell like, hey, I know that you're saying that you're really good and everything's fine in your life, but I can tell that it's not, and that's okay. And like, I'm here for you. Like that type of stuff,
Mm-hmm.
it always comes from, so the emotional and spiritual connection and actually helping people in meaningful ways, it always comes from the source of stillness, which is the way of the Buddha. It's God. It's our own self. It's our own spirit. It's all of that together emerging. So tapping into that inspiration.
Mm-hmm. Kind of got like an image of like how you said like the every day is a battle between like the light and the darkness, and it's like which one's gonna win, and it's totally up to you. And I think like in those moments, it's like you're peeling back the darkness or the thoughts or whatever, the intellect that's in the way, and you're letting your soul look at theirs and communicate with their soul. And I think that's where the connection feeling comes from, you know?
That's pretty cool. Stripping away the physical limitations and like,
Yeah.
let's just connect like spirit to spirit, depth to depth. Like it's really cool to visualize it like that. Like, okay, I'm a physical being, but my spirit is connecting with this other spirit.
Mm-hmm.
It's just cool.
It's cool
Just,
imagery.
I've never thought about it that way. That's really powerful. So yeah, meaningful connection has to come up from that. So anytime it's just interesting to look at your own life and when did you feel deeply connected to another person? To some degree, there had to be some stillness or presence involved in that interaction. Okay, so pretty cool. So I want to talk about we're still on the question of like what's the value of being present and being in the moment and not being carried away by thinking. I think stress is a really good example of the suffering that can come when we're not present and when we are thinking. Um, so let's talk about stress for a second as an example. So like in counseling and even in my own life and myself, I do this too, is I hear people and myself say things like, she said this and it caused so much stress, or I hit traffic this morning and it was so stressful,
Mm-hmm.
or like, yeah, I think the like I hit traffic and it just was so it's been such a stressful morning because of the traffic.
Yeah.
Like what is fundamentally false about things like that we often say? What is perhaps not true about some of those statements?
First thing that comes to my head, and correct me if I'm wrong, is like the stress was already there. That was just an event. Like that thing didn't cause that level of stress.
Mm.
It brought up the stress that you may have already been feeling.
Yeah, that can be definitely true for sure. So that's kind of the emotional side of it. On the thought side of it is nothing external can actually cause us stress ever. Now, what if a bear comes in and is about to attack us? That's going to be the biological anxious. That's anxiety, and that we're going to get the heck out of there.
You probably should feel those things. That's healthy.
And then we're out of there, and then we're safe. But people want to believe, this is part of the attachment that people have to their thoughts, their physical thoughts, is that they actually believe that they are not in control of the stress they have in their life, that it just happens because of work or a person or so. And that's just not the truth. An example is, let's say that you're driving to work and you just hit a bunch of traffic. If you're present, what you'll notice is these thoughts start to roll in. Like, this is ridiculous. Like, this is going to ruin my day. I don't deserve this. There's too many people that live in this area. Like, this is ridiculous. Like, so what's interesting is stress is caused not from an event, but our resistance to it, our inability to accept it
as it's happening
for what it is. Because all these thoughts are trying to get you to not accept, to resist what is happening.
And does that come from like a intellectual place and then turns into an emotional thing?
Exactly.
Because you accept or you don't accept what's happening?
Exactly.
That's really interesting.
And it's, as I've been trying to be more intensely present the last 2 days, the subtleness of these thoughts it's crazy. Like, for example, I had a teenage client. I just finished a session today. It happened to me. I just finished a session today, and a teenage client was coming up next. And I instantly had these thoughts of like, oh, this session's going to suck. Or he doesn't even really want to be coming into therapy, which is kind of true. But these thoughts are all commenting on in the next 10 minutes or in the next 30 minutes, like, this is going to be stressful. Yeah. Now, if I hold on to those, it actually will be stressful. But because I was in my spirit, because I was present, I could see the thoughts start to roll in. And guess what? He doesn't really want to be in therapy, and he is kind of difficult. But I felt no stress. There's no resistance to it. It's just like the session ended early, and it was like, actually, this is kind of nice. I have an extra 15 minutes. Like, it was great. So I think correcting some of our language around stress it can be helpful to recognize that, like, wait a second, I can actually be in traffic and be late and have it affect and whatever how that plays out. Like, okay, going back, we're going to talk more about this, but just going back, if I can accept the situation, and acceptance can only come from this present space, this
Mm-hmm.
still space.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, what would that look like in this example where it's like, okay, there's traffic. Interesting. There actually isn't a lot of, there isn't a lot of needed dialogue. It's just like, oh, there's traffic. And from that place, because I'm present and I'm not getting taken out of the present moment, now I actually, if I need to, I can actually think of a solution. So I text my appointment that I have, let them know I'm 15 minutes late. And then I might pop over to the HOV lane illegally.
Or just
Hopefully
a
not
little.
illegally.
Yeah.
And then that's it. There's no, the traffic does not cause that. It's our, so this is a huge Buddhist teaching of like, events in our life are the current in the river. Sometimes that current is stronger. Sometimes it is not as strong. When the current starts picking up, the natural man, the natural state of a human is to start swimming against it. Like, no.
It's going to take me away.
As soon as we start swimming against it, that's when we experience stress. Why? Because it's a waste of energy. And stress is an indicator from our deeper self that you're putting energy into something that's a waste or that you shouldn't be.
Yeah. Like you're devoting important energy to something that's not too important.
Yep.
I feel like, so is there like, if you were to give a suggestion to somebody who's asking about like dealing with that and having like struggling with not being present or whatever, would you remember that story that we talked about a few podcasts ago? We talked about like the Chinese farmer and his son and how you can't call things ahead of time. You know, he breaks his leg and he's like, now we can't farm because my son has a broken leg, and the horses run away and then the horses come back and then like all this stuff happens, and the whole time the dad's like, you can't call it. Would you suggest that like focusing on perspective, because your perspective on the situation could create dread or like negative feelings? So would it be like, I don't know. I guess the question I'm asking is like, should you be focusing on being present, or can you add something to that and say perspective inside of being present?
The presence is really the answer.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're present in that moment, the acceptance becomes, unless you start attaching yourself to thoughts, the acceptance becomes almost automatic. Because our spirit goes with the flow of the natural way of life. It doesn't resist. What resists things is our thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
But our true nature does not. So we're going to talk, like, so the answer of like, how do I experience less stress in my life is I have to be more intensely present and still and have a practice for that in my day to day. And we're going to talk about that in just a second. But yeah, that's a really cool question for sure. The other thing that I just think is maybe the last thing to share about this is that I really like to view this as, okay, why does it that not being, what's the other reason why not being present causes so much suffering? A good way to view it is your physical brain being like a waiting room,
Okay,
a lobby, and then your spirit being like your office or your house. We'll just say office since we're on the lobby thing. So now if you are always stuck in the lobby and not in your house or not in your office, then as soon as, now what comes through the lobby is chaos. Like anxiety is shooting through there all the time. Fear, shame, insecurity, like commentary on other people and how they suck and how you suck and all that. It's actual madness.
Yeah.
And like, so if you are living in there, you're going to be taking in. So if you're in the lobby, as soon as a thought goes in there, as soon as it automatically takes root. It's automatic. So if I'm not present and I hit traffic and I'm thinking about stuff in my mind while I'm driving, then that thought of this is stupid, There's too many people that live here. This is the worst. That's automatically taking root.
Just drops right down.
Boom. Automatically, I'm feeling
Dang.
stressed. And that's why people think events cause stress, is because they're not often present in that moment.
Mm-hmm.
They're in their head.
And then they get confused because like the feelings were real. It had to have been. And it's like, no, that makes a lot of sense.
So now if I'm present, if I'm still, if I'm in this, if I'm really fully here now and driving my car, maybe I'm listening to some music and I'm just like feeling good and there's no thoughts going on, and the traffic hits, at least now that those thoughts might still take root if I'm not careful, but at least I can see them come in the lobby,
Mm-hmm.
and I can choose to let them come in or take root, or I can say, no, I'm not interested. We have this power.
Yeah. It's really just calling for like a higher responsibility over yourself.
Yes. That's a
'Cause-
cool way to put it. Like, yep.
Yeah. There's no pointing the finger I love that about this concept.
Right. This is the best way to, as far as thoughts, and this is how to not be a victim.
Mm-hmm.
People can't cause you stress. Your inability to accept somebody's behavior is what's causing you stress.
Mm-hmm.
And don't misinterpret that. We're not saying that there's some, there's a difference between acceptance and tolerating, or what, I don't know, whatever. So we're going to talk more about like how to accept things a little bit, but the powerful thing behind what we're talking about is the scripture in the Bible that I think is really powerful in this concept is, it says, in your patience possess you your soul. In your patience possess you your soul. Okay, what does that mean? Well, another term for patience or word is calmness or balance. So when we are calm, when we are patient, when we're balanced, we possess our own, we're in control.
Yeah.
We're in control of if stress causes, or the traffic causes us stress. But if we're not, then we are not in possession of our own soul. Someone else's or something else is.
Driving at that point.
In Christianity, that's Satan. In Buddhism, that's the ego, maybe, is gaining ground,
Mm-hmm.
So just think about that. Like if I am able to, even if it's like for an hour or 50, if I'm able to just be more present with some of these practices we're talking about, then that's an hour less of potential suffering in my life. That's an hour less of overwhelm. Like that can make a big difference for some people. It's
rejuvenating too. Like,
yep.
15 minutes is rejuvenating to me. Like just doing some yoga and then 15 minutes of meditation. So surprised how much of an impact just that makes on the next day or that day. I'm still working up to get into like an hour a day or something like that. I don't know if I will, but it really makes a difference being still.
It does. I want to get your thoughts on, so let's talk about like how to actually do that.
Mm-hmm.
How do I actually be more present and avoid much of the suffering and feel more connected? How do I become more present in my life? I would love to get your thoughts, man, on, not just because you're Asian, but
it's a big part.
Just kidding. It's just genetically
gotta change your race.
We just know how to relax,
Totally kidding. Yeah, what have you done, man, that has been helpful? What has helped you be like more present, more still in your life? What are some like rituals or things that you've done?
That's a good question. Well, I can talk about like the practices that I do, and I'll kind of talk about some of the thinking I have around it. Is like the first thing for me was like understanding what the stillness was supposed to give me.
That's cool.
I needed to know like what it was for and what it was supposed to do for me. And I think that's kind of what got me pulled into like yoga and stuff, is there's a lot of like listening to yourself listening to what your body is trying to tell you, listen to what your body needs. And that really interests me. I really want to know what my body wants me to do, because sometimes it's very confusing, like what I'm supposed to be feeling or what I'm supposed to be doing. And so what I like to do is I like to do some stretching and move my body around more first and get my breath consistent through yoga, exhale, inhale whenever you're doing your motions or in and out of your motions. Once I get kind of like my blood pumping and I have some energy, I know I won't fall asleep when I do meditation as easy. So I'll go right into meditation from there. And I really focus on like the breathing part of meditation, because I know my thoughts are the enemy when I'm meditating. So I focus on sound instead. For some reason, that just like turns my brain off, and I can just do ocean breathing and focus on my inhale, exhale. And I do that for as long as I can. And
Cool.
then I'll like pause and like sit in it. And I'll kind of look around the room and like re-wake myself up, because I don't know. I feel like when trying to find stillness, like I feel like time slows down for me, because I feel like my life's always moving really quickly. And then when I stop and do some stillness and some meditation, like time stretches out, and it reminds me how much time I have in the day and how much I can get done and how there's not anything to worry about. Like, I don't know. It's just like a great reminder to me of like the reality of life and time and the way things move. It's not as scary. It's not as fast as I feel every time before I start doing the meditation. So I don't know. I use it as like a slow down and check in kind of a thing.
I love this quote, just going off what you're saying. When you lose touch with inner stillness, you lose touch with yourself. When you lose touch with yourself, you get lost in the world.
Mm-hmm.
So what's powerful about what you're saying is if you really care about connecting with a friend, you will visit them often. If you want to stay more connected to this, your true self, this really valuable and important space, you have to connect with it often. How do you do that? You intentionally, I think my suggestion, the first thing I would suggest is you start off with just 2 minutes. By this point, if you've been listening to the podcast, the thing we've encouraged the most is to have a daily spiritual practice. If you don't have one, start one today, tomorrow, and start it with 2 minutes of just being still. Okay, what does that mean? That means to not think. That means to pay attention to your senses, your sensory perception. So for a lot of people, it's helpful as a starting point just to close their eyes and just pay attention to the breath. And if a thought comes in, you just let it pass. And then you refocus. Why is the breath so powerful when it comes to connecting with our spirit, or as a powerful stillness practice? It's because it's a symbol of renewal. I love what you were saying earlier. Like the opposite of renewal is getting drained. When we're in suffering, when we're taken away with thoughts, we're overwhelmed, we're getting drained. Our energy is draining. So breathing, and obviously we're breathing all day. So it's got to be intentional. It's got to be conscious breaths.
Mm-hmm.
I just did one now. It felt really good. It's a renewal of you're actually so it's a renewal of the body.
Yeah, I think like physiologically and symbolically, I think all of those things. It's rejuvenating. It's reinvigorating your body. Like you got the vagus nerve. It's being affected by that. The symbology of like inhaling fresh oxygen, exhaling carbon dioxide.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's awesome.
I think it's cool.
It is cool. So 2 minutes as part of your spirit, ideally sometime in the morning, so you can so this is a reminder The meditation, what's the purpose of it? I love what you said. I have to understand the purpose of it before I just do it. I'm not just going to do things to do them. The purpose of it, the main purpose of it, is to get reminded that this is me, that I am behind my thinking. I am the person behind all the thoughts and all the craziness. I am this spirit of truth, of peace. It's so cool what happens when you start to have this. By the way, we're saying words to describe it. It is an experience that once you have, you'll be like, oh, I get it. I had this cool experience today that highlights some of the benefits of taking time to be still. And it was when I was just driving my car. It was actually on auto drive, which is nice. And I had this experience where my spirit kind of left my body and I was above the car just viewing this human just driving.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, look at that cool. Look at that human just driving.
Only in 2025 can you do that safely.
Yeah.
Right. But regardless of that, I was just aware of what was going on, and I was just very still. And what emerged from that, I didn't even have to try to find this. What emerged from that was just gratitude.
Mm.
And I'm not basing this off of just this experience, but every person spirit is made up of gratitude. If we are still and we are present, we start to feel this natural gratitude for living.
Yeah.
And I was like, it's just great to be alive. What a gift to just be alive. And as I was still even more, just peace is a common, consistent one that comes up for almost everybody. So your spirit is also made up of peace. There's another passage in the Bible that says, be still and know that I am God. So why is this space important to tap into? Because this is where God lives all the time. This is where he lived. This is where his house is. This is where, if you don't believe in God, this is where all inspiration and truth comes from, is this source. And so when we're in that space, we are at one with all of that. So, and I believe this renewal of the breath and us taking time to be still, we get what we need in the moment. Sometimes it might be gratitude. Sometimes it might be peace. Sometimes it might be pain, actually. There might be some pain there that we might need to feel and just let out, that we've been kind of avoiding. And so just trust, other than thoughts, trust what comes up in that space other than thoughts. Now, can inspirational thoughts come up in that space? Of course they can, but for now, it's probably good to just say, like, no thinking. But if a thought does come up, you just kind of know it's coming from that space. It comes from up and within, basically. So, okay, so 2-minute practice. How else do I achieve this state of presence? Let's talk about what's a common thing for all of us, I think, for most of us, is getting lost in doing. This is also a cause of suffering, is when we start to get lost in doing tasks.
Mm-hmm.
I'm all about being a high-functioning human being, but we don't want to get lost in doing. And that's where stress comes from. We already talked about that. But something that is another ritual that you can do is you could set reminders on your phone if you want to, but kind of a good little mini practice that I like is in between tasks, if I'm working, that might be sessions, in between a session with the client, I will always try to make a note of take 3 just breaths. It's like, here I am. This is still me. It's so grounding and renewing.
Yeah.
Even if I'm late, now the thoughts will say, hey, you're 5 minutes late. You got to go straight out there and you got to go get this person, or you're 5 minutes late. You got to rush in. That's coming from thought.
Right.
trying to rush you, cause suffering. Taking 3 breaths takes 5 seconds.
Yeah.
And it's amazing the impact that it can have. So trying to have moments of stillness in between tasks. If you have a bunch of tasks lined up, and then the other big one is any other of the spiritual, like nature. Nature is stillness. Nature is presence, and so it can be a reminder of your need to do that. So those are a few that come to mind. Anything else, man, as far as practices? So I guess what we're saying is you're starting to see how these rituals become really important. We need to remember who we are, because thoughts are constantly trying to take us out of that and to cause us to forget that.
I love that, like, you're like the bullet points that we've laid out here. Perfection is not the goal. It is not 0 thoughts every time you sit down for 2 minutes. It's reaching that point of no thought is the goal. And however many times it takes, however long it takes, even if it's for 10 seconds, take your wins, where you can get them. Don't beat yourself up if you spend 2 minutes of trying. That's fine.
Right. To me, the power is being intentional in doing it rather than the length or the amount. Like I'm impressed with you because it's in your genes. You can meditate for quite a while.
Yeah.
I actually don't really I don't meditate in my life. Well, I do these rituals that I've talked about, which are mini meditations, but to me, longer meditations, I'm sure they're really valuable, and I'm sure maybe I'll get into them. But I try to find moments. To me, it's always been a lot easier to be present with people, especially at my job. And so that is actually like a stillness and meditation practice for me, is like my work. And we can use mundane things to be powerful symbols or pointers to be still. Like you just got a job recently delivering packages. So like the practice of like at least when I pick up a package from my truck and I deliver it to the door, I'm just going to consciously focus on my steps and just setting it down slowly and calmly. And I'm actually not going to be in a rush. And maybe if I need to, then I will, but whatever, we can still be present in doing that. But I'm not going to let my thoughts dictate that. I'm going to choose to do that out of my own volition. That is the key, is who we are is intentional, like we've been talking about. So this might be a good way to wrap up the whole presence thing, is this cool quote. This is the culture of the ancient East.
Ooh.
Whatever the task, approach it with calmness and full presence. Avoid rushing just to finish. Instead, commit to each action with a relaxed focus. Give your complete attention to what you're doing, allowing yourself to fully engage and find enjoyment in the process. There's more, but I love that. Give your complete attention. What does it mean to be present? Give your complete attention to what you're doing, allowing yourself to fully engage and find enjoyment in the process. The other day, I was picking up my cup to take a drink of water, and I felt so much joy, just the simplicity of, and the slowness of picking up this cup and then sipping it and just like feeling the water go down my throat. That was such a nice drink. It sounds so dumb.
It does.
But that, like, you actually can feel the joy in the simple. You know, people say that all the time. Find the joy in the simple things.
Yeah.
Like the joy in just simple living.
Yeah. And it made me think of just the sin or the missing the mark of and the natural state of us, a human, of wanting more, like, oh, if I had this car, if I had more money, this nicer house. The ego, the Satan, the mind, the physical brain is trying to convince you that if you have more, you will be happy in your life. And the truth is if you think less, and if you more more presence equals more fulfillment.
Yeah. I love that idea of like, it makes me wonder, like, if you're not fully engaged with whatever you're doing, can you ever fully enjoy what you're doing?
No.
I think that's so interesting because it's like, you think about like growing up as a kid and there was like the neighbor's birthday party and you don't really like that kid, but your mom's like, you got to go. Like, you got to support your friend. And you're like, I don't want to go. And then you go, and the second you start actually engaging at the party and you're there fully present, you end up having a good time. And then you come home, you're like, that was a great time. I don't know what I was thinking.
Right.
I just find that so interesting that it's about the acceptance of it, not anything else. It's just accept it and jump in, and then you might enjoy it. But if you don't, you might not enjoy it ever. I think that's really interesting.
And try to be aware of the constant commentary on everything that you're doing and what's about to come up for you. The comment of like, oh, you're seeing this teenager next, like he doesn't even want to come. Like, this isn't, the commentary is basically like something that you won't like is about to come up, or something sucks is about to occur. And it's like, what?
Are you even telling me that?
It's like, and the thing is like, it's not us.
Yeah.
It's just the physical, chaotic, natural. Anyways, so it just is so subtle and it's so constant. And this source of ego or Satan is constantly, if Satan or the ego is not having success in taking over, what's the only tactic that they have? Well, they're going to try to drain our energy.
Yeah.
They're going to try to distract us from being present so that we have less energy. They're going to resist. We just have such a hard time with that as human beings. Like, look, this is, I guess the example, we have such a hard time accepting. So we should talk about maybe acceptance a little bit more. But one of the things that so this is a cool Buddhist, in the Buddhist teachings, they have something called, I don't want to botch it. Let me make sure it's called the Eightfold Path. So the Eightfold Path is Buddha's roadmap to liberation from suffering and the attainment of enlightenment. So it's the path from suffering, to enlightenment. And one of the keys to the path is seeing reality as it is, not as we want it to be. So a cop pulls me over and gives me a ticket. And what I've learned over the years is no matter how I drive, I get a ticket on average once every 2 years. No matter what I do, it just seems like that's how it is in Utah because they have nothing better to do. Yeah. There's no crime here. Yeah. So I can either resist that truth. I'm going to obviously try to drive as good as I can, but it seems like no matter what I do, I can't be perfect at driving. So it's like once every 2 years. So what I've actually done is I have money set aside for a ticket.
For whenever it happens.
So when a cop pulls me over and gives me a ticket, it's like, yep, this is the way of life. Hopefully the experience next time I get is instant acceptance, no suffering. Because I get the ticket, the cop's like, hey, you were speeding, here's your ticket. Immediately after, this is like, even when he's in the car, it's like, he better not give me a ticket. If he does, like, this is, what a jerk.
Just my luck. It's just me. Caught him on a bad day.
Like, my life, like, this sucks. My life sucks. Oh, now I can't.
Yeah.
Like, this is, how much is this going to be? It's 300. Like, all of these thoughts are stopping us from just going with the natural flow of the way that it is. No matter how much you think about it, you're still going to have to pay the ticket. No matter what you think about, you're still stuck in traffic. So let's talk about that for maybe a second. How can we be better at accepting things as they really are and resisting less?
Just an idea. Maybe focusing on like worldview and your what is it? Like your personal view in the world,
Spiritual view?
spiritual view, worldview. Maybe seeing what is in your control and what's not in your control, and then maybe starting small.
Yeah, that is good. How can we get better at accepting what is? It was really powerful, I think, what we were talking about earlier of the preparation of being better at acceptance is the practice of being still and present. Because if you are, and then a difficult event happens, you don't even need to try that hard to accept it. It almost becomes something that happens pretty naturally because
you're conditioned.
Yeah. I like the saying you're responding instead of reacting. There's a really big difference between responding and reacting. When we are present, we are able to respond. When we are not, then often we react, which causes more suffering and stress and
less intention behind what you're doing.
Yeah. So presence is the way to suffer less and to accept more automatically. Now, okay, we can't be perfect. So what if we're not present and something happens? Well, that's when we have these emotional cues that tell us that we need to shift our perspective. So we talked about stress. Stress is a good one. Stress or frustration is our body telling us that we're putting energy into something that is not going to serve us. Too much going out, swimming against the current. So those are good indicators like, oh, I missed the thoughts that were causing me suffering, but it's okay because now I have my emotions as a backup to give me those signals that I need to change my perspective, find more of a spiritual perspective.
Right.
I think those are the two best ways.
If you have benefited from this podcast in any way, it would mean the world to us to have you subscribe, to allow us to keep it going and bring on inspirational human beings.